Welcome to our web exclusive. I'm Mike Montecalvo, along with Eyewitness News analyst Lieutenant General Reginald Centracchio. General, the unrest in Egypt is really spreading across the Middle East right now. We're seeing problems in Bahrain, Iran right now, and the Suez Canal. This could be a problem there, too. This is not really a surprise. We kind of knew this would develop over the last several weeks.
I think so. Once we saw I think what really triggered the whole thing was the successful protesting in Egypt. And so that just caught fire. Well, the thing that started it before that was the success that we saw in the rest of the Mideast as far as the social networking was concerned. When you see this happening, you know it's going to go from one country to another. My major concern has to do with what is going to happen in Bahrain. That's the home of the United States Navy fleet in the Mediterranean. And what's going to happen in Iran, because that's all festering right now. And if it spreads across the Mideast in a real fast-paced basis, that could be really disastrous for our presence in the Mideast.
You're talking about the social networking. They were tweeting, telling people to go in the square and protest. You know, I think if people are looking at it, they said Egypt, by and large, was a peaceful protest, but we're finding out 365 people died in the last 18 days.
Yeah, and that's brand new. You know, I didn't realize it was that many. Basically because it wasn't coming out, you know, like we would see it in the United States. And I think that the thing that really made a big difference too is the effectiveness of the social networking, specifically Facebook and other social network systems. When you shut it down, that really flames a lot of people to be able to come out and be more aggressive, because that's their only access. So when it went back in, then you saw it expand tremendously, and that's exactly what's happening in all of the other Mideast countries as we speak.
Well, in Bahrain, the military has backed off a bit. They're hoping that would ease the tension. They're not going to be, let's say, as patient as they were in Egypt.
Absolutely right. It's a different military. They don't have the kind of respect that they had in Egypt for its military, because it's representative of the people. You know, it's a conscript military. In Bahrain, I don't think you'll see the tolerance and the patience that we saw in Egypt, unfortunately, because that, once again, that's a sensitive point for the U.S. military presence in the Mediterranean. If that goes down and we're asked to leave, that's a huge problem for the United States.
This didn't happen in Egypt. Did you see this today in Bahrain?
I think not. I don't think, maybe somewhere down the road, but I don't think you would have seen it in such a close proximity to Egypt. Maybe somewhere down the road. I thought really that we would have seen this maybe simultaneously in Iran, because social networking is the key to a younger generation, and you're seeing right now the protests taking place in Tehran and throughout Iran, because there's an unrest with the kind of government that kids just don't want to be beholden to.
Well, Hosni Mubarak left, as we saw in Egypt. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in Iran said he's not going anywhere, that he's going to stay there.
Well, that's what Mubarak said, too. But if it got to the point where, keeping in mind, Iran is not really run by Ahmadinejad. It's run by a cleric, you know, at the highest levels. If there was any degradation of the ability to control that country because it's a theocracy, you would see Ahmadinejad go, and I'm convinced of that. It's not so much as whether he wants to go. It would be based upon whether, in fact, the theocracy lead, the Khomeini, would be able to say, okay, it's time for you to go.
Who has more influence in their military, though?
Khomeini. Yeah, no doubt in my mind. That entire country is controlled by the religious aspects versus the alleged administration of the country itself.
It's kind of a new chapter in just the anger in the Arab countries right now, General.
You know, I think we've seen it, not to this extent, but we've seen it certainly in the past in a different way. We saw it with the Shah in Iran. We saw it with several scenarios in the past several decades, but it never got to the point that it's at now. Because of the consideration that you have such a vast capability to talk to a lot of people in a very short amount of time, and they're willing to put themselves in harm's way to get their point across.
Israel is claiming that Iran is bringing ships into the Suez Canal, and that could be a problem. There's no confirmed reports of this as of Wednesday right now. No. You have always said if the Suez Canal is shut down, that's when it's going to affect the entire world with just oil prices.
40% of the oil comes out of the Mideast, goes to the Suez Canal. I don't know this for a fact, but I would think, just a matter of common sense, that there has to be a plan either with the United Nations or specifically those countries countries involved in their dependence upon that oil would, I think, take over the Suez Canal if it were jeopardized with having trafficability through that area, and specifically the pipeline.
How long would they wait?
I think you'd wait until oil prices got to $150, a barrel, and perhaps it would be reflected at our gas pumps, as well as primarily non-availability, not so much the price, but non-availability, because we operate on an economy that depends on that raw material, specifically crude, to continue our economy. If it starts to affect the economy, I think we'll see action either with the United Nations or maybe even unilaterally with the United States.
Just to talk about the unrest that's going on in Yemen, for example, I think they had about 3,000 protesters that are calling for the ouster of their country's leader. They are really a critical partner in all of this, in the fight against al-Qaeda, General. So it's like, where does the United States fit in all of this?
Very, very, very cautiously. In addition to your observations, we also need to be extremely concerned, and I know we're getting off the subject a little bit here, but Pakistan, too, is part of this whole equation, as well as Turkey, as well as Saudi Arabia. And all those countries really, at this particular point, are on our side as it relates to the war on terror and to fight al-Qaeda and the Taliban in the case of Afghanistan. If that fell apart, then we would certainly be in one bad scenario to try to deal with that by ourselves, being that far away from it and not having, substantial troops in the area or enough other countries on our side to be able to continue to fight.
How quickly can al-Qaeda get their ducks in order to really be a force again?
I think it would be a matter of days if there was a major disruption in the oil and a major disruption in our ability to satisfy and resupply and shut down the logistics train to the forces both in Iraq and Afghanistan. It wouldn't be long at all. I mean, we need that constant fulfillment of logistical resources to ensure that we can continue to fight. So they would certainly leverage that and take advantage of it, even if it were a couple of days.
You're talking about our relationship with Pakistan getting a little dicey here. President Obama has raised the stakes, insisting that a detained American embassy employee who killed a Pakistani to be freed. They don't want to free him. So where do we go from here?
This will be one of those situations where it takes high-level diplomacy. You want this? We need this. I've got this. If you want it, you're going to have to do this. So it's a matter of just playing chess at this particular point. I think right now they have us in check as far as that individual is concerned. We don't want to get to the point where we put them in checkmate or them put us in checkmate, because if that is the case, then the only other option is a military scenario, and you don't want that anywhere near that with certainly with Pakistan.
Okay, let's switch gears just for a second, General, before we run out of time. The Senate has voted. They voted on Tuesday to extend for 90 days the provisions of the Patriot Act. 90 days enough in all of this for us?
No, it's not. By the time we even sift this out or reduce it to writing, to have somebody apply it and further study it, which is the case. Further debate. Every time we come up with something new, there's a need to further debate it. We're not talking about a huge scenario. We're talking about the ability to, in some cases, put out wiretapping on known instances where you have terrorists involved. You talk about freezing some assets. And clearly all these things were devised in the best interest of the security of the United States. So we can debate it for the next several months. But the bottom line is the terrorists are not waiting for us to debate it. They'll continue to try to do additionally bad things to us, in spite of our arguing about our need to know when they're going to do it and who's going to do it.
Well, the Patriot Act put into place days after 9/11. Rand Paul, a Republican from Kentucky, says we haven't debated this fully, that we really need to talk about this a little more. What kind of talking do you think needs to go on?
I really don't know. We talked about it. We've determined that it is in the best interest of the United States security, that we have these systems in place to be able to be proactive and not be reactive. And we've said this so many times before. The United States and other countries who don't want terrorism have got to get it right every single time. Al-Qaeda and the Taliban and other terrorist organizations only need to do it right once. And if we don't have these systems in place to be proactive and stop it before it happens, they will be successful. And we'll see another 9/11 somewhere in the world.
We're coming up to the anniversary, the 10-year anniversary. Does that concern you?
Well, it does, I think, because, in fact, Napolitano said last week that we've never been at a heightened alert as we are right now since 9/11. That's got to mean that something is about to happen based upon whatever intelligence we have, or maybe even trying to leverage a particular time that is sensitive to us, such as the 10th anniversary, and maybe they have information that would suggest that we need to pay better attention and not be so passive in the fact that because nothing has happened, nothing else is going to happen for the next 10 years. I don't think that's true. I think we better brace ourselves that if we let our guard down, something will definitely happen.
Okay, General Centracchio, as always, thank you very much
to
for your
be
time. Thanks for watching.